Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. Good morning, Arlo. Good morning, Ange. Good morning, Bryant Greene. You'll meet him in a minute. Welcome to Founders Forum. It's a rainy day in Philadelphia today, but it's beautiful inside the studio, and it's beautiful outside because, as our last guest that we was actually live with this morning said, rain can help your state of flow. And I like that. Water and rain can help your state of flow. Ange, I think you have a thought that you're thinking about today. Why don't you introduce that, and we'll discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think kind of playing off of the conversation that we had a little bit earlier today about being in flow and about, being surrounded by water, and water is flow. And of course, as humans, we're made up of 70% water, right? So there's the importance of flow in general. And, for me, the thought I had today was taking that concept a step further and thinking about, what do we do when the unexpected happens, right? So, Mark, you're aware I had some very unexpected things happen in my life in the last couple of weeks that kind of come out of left field. That when you get a big curveball that thrown that way, whether it's personal or business or financial, how do you regroup after that? How do you respond in the moment? How do you regroup from it? And one of the things I can say is, by the work I've done the last year as well on myself and learning to be in flow has helped me, I think, adjust in the moment to some of these, unforeseen things. And I didn't always operate that way in my life or my business. And I think learning how to do that, learning how to be prepared for the unexpected without, letting it derail you or derail a business is a pretty important factor. So that was kind of heavy on my mind today. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
Gotcha. Well, it certainly does because as entrepreneurs, we're thrown curveballs all the time. But instead of me answering, I'd love for Bryant to chime in because you've never had curveballs thrown at you in business before, have you?
Everything is always, the unexpected, especially in home care. But this week in particular, I think that my curveball was my assistant, who is like my fifth and sixth and seventh hand. She had to have emergency surgery.
Oh, boy.
And so I told her, I'm a business guy. I'm not a clinician at all, but because I work around clinicians all the time, I kind of like, and like Mr. WebMD. And just so her symptoms, I'm like, you know what, have you ever had your appendix taken out? And she's like, no. And I said, well, Uber down to Jefferson. This is a true story. Monday, she Ubered down to Jefferson, and they wound up keeping her, and she had an emergency appendectomy.
Oh, boy.
And so for me, the unexpected was having to navigate. She keeps track of my calendar. She helps me out on the farm. She orders my lunch. She wipes my hands. She wipes my nose. She's my therapist. And it was roles reversed because she was all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, they're going to do surgery. I said, calm down. It's a common surgery. You'll be all right. And I can't get to you right this minute, but, we're going to be okay. So that was my curveball.
But it was your turn to take care of her, the table's turn.
Right. And I'm naked. I'm looking through my calendar. I have 3 calendars for 3 different reasons. And anyway, she is, off hours. She is really like my work, beyond a work wife. She is really my...
Is that Jessica? Because she and I communicated.
Jessica Mateo.
Yeah.
She's home now. And I made her stay home there. She's going to try to come in and catch up, and, that kind of thing, just for dedicated. But when you lose somebody like that in an intricate role, for me, that was the unexpected. So for these first 3 days, they've been a challenge.
Is she back, or is she back soon, or...
No, I made her stay home today. So I'm going to talk to her after this after our broadcast. I want to talk to her to see where she is. But I insisted that she stay home. It's Wednesday. I might make her stay home for the rest of the week, which is going to be hard for her because, like me, she's a workaholic. And so she's at her apex when she's working. And
right.
So,
she's a fish out of water right now.
Yes.
So to speak. We'll talk about fish in a little bit too, but that's another topic. So listen, let us all back up. Let me introduce our guest, Bryant Greene, who is the founder of Always Best Care Senior Services. He alluded to that. He's got skilled and non-skilled care services in Pennsylvania and non-skilled care in Delaware. He is also a hobby farmer and has a nonprofit, Uncle B's Rescue Farm. So welcome, Uncle B, here today. That's what you're already. TJ's our engineer's Uncle B. He gives a thumbs up, and he's got a 13-acre farm in not Washington Township, but Sewell, New Jersey. Right?
In Mantua Township, on the other side of Sewell.
Township. Yep. And he's got horses, donkeys, alpacas, a bunch of dogs, a bunch of cats. He says he likes animals better than people. I'm not sure if that's true, but this morning he seems pretty good with people. But anyway, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, because I know there's an interesting story there. How'd you get started in your business? How'd you get to have the rescue farm, et cetera?
So I grew up in West Philadelphia, and I have probably about 20 years of corporate America experience, accounting, finance, business operations. And through no fault of my own, I was laid off. And I was laid off at the time where there was an outro of Bush and an intro of Obama.
A little curveball, by the way.
It was a big curveball.
Yeah.
I mean, if they'd have let me stay there, I'd probably retire with that cable giant. I mean, I had a corner office, TV in the office, free cable, free internet. I'm still in therapy. I still get mad when I pay that bill, but anyway, I'm working.
We all do, I think.
I'm working it out. But I was in a situation where I was competing for employment with people that had 10, 15 years my senior, and they were willing to work for less. And I was out at the Wells Fargo. They had a career fair / diversity pink slip party, because at that time a lot of people on the street looking for a job. And a franchise broker approached me, and he said, what would you do if what would you do if you could buy a franchise? And I said, I would buy a strip club. That's what he did. Let out a gut laugh. He says, "What?" He said, just dead serious. I said, what else is going to be recession proof? And anyway, he introduced me to 4 turnkey operations, and the one that appealed to me the most was senior care. I have a big family on both sides, and because my mother started young, I had the blessings of both sets of grandparents, and until adulthood, I had both of my great grandmothers. And so I really understood that. And their peer group. I always say the grandmothers, but their peer group. So, my first couple of babysitters were my great-grandmothers. So now, fast forward,
Very fortunate, first of all, to have that situation.
If I could just have them as a real fully grown adult. I was a young adult, teenager when one passed, and a young adult, young parent when the second one passed. If I could just have 5 more minutes with them. I would. It was just the recipes and the conversation, and neither one of them had a high school education. They had common sense, and so because the book is going to be called "Success Through Dysfunction," because a lot of the successes come from dysfunction. Honestly, my experience with dysfunction, home care. A lot of times people think that that's just as simple as you sending somebody into somebody's home and everything's going to be okay. But because we deal with a lot of different scenarios, you say expect the unexpected. We do that just about every day. But we went against the franchise model. Actually, the franchise model, which started out in Sacramento, California, suggested that we go after private pay. And we made the decision early on when we would go out and do the referral calls. Everybody wanted to know whether or not we were connected with Medicaid, which, by the way, is the biggest healthcare payer. Right. And so when we got Medicaid certified as a business, we catapulted. And I'm happy to say I'm number one in the I've been in business for 13 years on the 15th. But out of those 13 years, 11 of them, I've been number one in the franchise in the country.
Has that caused the franchisor to change their thoughts on?
Sometimes they treat me like it's a fluke. They can't believe it because it's so against their business model. But in any franchise, I think what people have to realize is, as I matriculated in the franchise, is that one size never fits all. You have to really go what really works in your area. The East Coast is very different and dynamic than the West Coast. Midwest has issues. Down South has different issues that they deal with. And all the different states have different Medicaid reimbursement rates. So it doesn't work for everybody. Right. Some places private pay is the thing. But lucky for me over here, we've hit, we strike some oil with, working with people with Medicaid. And I got to tell you, after 13 years of being in business for myself, I'm very proud as a minority business owner to have put together a multicultural staff and more an intergenerational staff. Messaging for us is always important. If you ask me what I say to other people I'm talking to them, communication. I might tell you a story or a joke about and reference something from the 80s. My daughter always tells me, Dad, that's from the 80s. But you talk to people that are a certain age, they don't get it. But they're in their phones Googling. I'll tell you, for instance, just really quickly, just not long ago, we were sitting around a leadership table and we were trying to come up with an incentive for the employees. I came up with a fabulous idea, I thought, to send somebody to Atlantic City for a weekend, all expense paid, and to see a show and get a meal. Well, half the room, 50 and older, thought that was wonderful. But my younger people were not moved at all. And so we said, well, what would you like? They were like, PTO. We don't want to go somewhere, PTO. So, that's the dynamics of the business. One size does not fit all. You have to really meet people where they are. I am a people person by nature, but like you said before, I sometimes see the worst in people sometimes. Meaning that they, in stress situations, unfortunately, in home care, a lot of people don't make the decision for home care until the last minute. So they're at the stress points. But a lot of times now that we've had some success too, people, you have people that are givers and you have a lot of people out there that are takers. And I hide from takers.
You're tuned into dysfunction too, which probably helps you be aware of that as well, right?
I try to read the room as fast as I can.
Exactly right. Gotcha. I could see that from our early conversations. By the way, I should mention, I didn't want to forget this, that Brian also has a radio and TV show called Did You Know on WORD radio in Philadelphia and also on cable TV, an hour-long show on all types of topics. So he's not a stranger to radio or broadcasting like some of our guests. So,
it's funny how that started. I was invited, just like coming here, early on in kind of the matriculation of the business, to kind of talk about a community event that we were one of the sponsors for. And the host at that point, Nick Talafario, he said, you really should be on radio. I thought, he's trying to sell me some advertising. And then 9.5 years later, that's how long I've been on radio. And same thing with TV. People said, "Oh God, you have you're pleasing to the eye." I was like, "Go ahead, let's say it some more. Say it some more now." And so I've just taken the show. The Did You Know show is centered around.
Well, we agreed we're both better looking in person than on Zoom, so or however we saw each other first. But
yeah, the Did You Know show is centered around connecting people to home, community, and business resources that you ordinarily wouldn't know about. So anything from the Alzheimer's Association, lupus, cancer, reentry programs. I just had Solomon Jones on my show talking about Man Up Philly, where we're dealing with the gun violence. Unfortunately, Philadelphia has become, with young people in particular, we just, that way of it, I try to get involved. I don't try to stay dormant. But it brings me into a lot of different unique scenarios that I guess I can honestly say, to be fully transparent, we do reap some benefit of that because I've become somewhat of an influencer only through the fact of working in the community. And people see that consistently, that we're out there in the streets and, we do give away a lot, but sometimes you have people that are not appreciative, I think. And I think they don't understand where the giving is coming from.
You say we, this is through, in the name of Always Best Care?
And personally.
And personally, yeah. Mm-hmm. I knew you do that as well.
Yeah,
hey, this is a very
Brian,
good... Ange, 1 second, because we do have to take a break. So you're going to ask the first question when we come back in a minute.
Perfect.
The lawyers at Kaplan, Stewart, Meloff, Reiter, and Stein PC understand the needs of small businesses. They deliver high-quality legal services and exceptional value to their clients every day. Their experienced legal team provides clients with guidance in many areas of the law, including real estate, land use and zoning, construction, business, civil litigation, estates and trusts, and employment matters. Kaplan Stewart also has cutting-edge technology to make the practice of law as efficient as possible. Call 610-260-6000 to schedule a consultation. Kaplan, Stewart, Meloff, Reiter, and Stein PC. Business lawyers for business people.
We're back on Founders Forum. And Ange, before you ask your question, I just want to mention, because I don't know if you know this, but Bryant, because I know you're very interested in AR and employee issues, has somewhere between 750 and 1,000 employees at any time. So with that, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And, and I just wanted to kind of chime in with a comment and lead into a question as well, Bryant, that, I love what you're speaking about here in terms of, you know, how you're involved in the community, and really from your employee base as well, really having more seasoned folks. You've got, younger folks as well. And, you know, in preparing for our call today and understanding that, it looks like you just also recently received the 2023 Franchise of the Year award, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So congratulations with
Thank
that.
you.
Um, but I think that not only is that an amazing, accomplishment, but, I'm curious for you, um, i- what you feel played a big part in that, right? So is it a lot of just sort of how you've kind of run the business? Is it maybe the extension into the community and different outreach that you've done? What do you attribute has really helped you, maybe some of the softer things or the things kind of behind the curtain that have helped you become such a successful franchisee owner as well?
It's a couple of things. Thank you. First of all, thank you. Um, the first thing I would say always consistently is that I understand dysfunction. And a lot of times we're faced with dysfunction and we don't sweep it under the rug. We deal with it up front. But one of the things I think that's made me successful is that my management style, leadership style, if you will, I'm a big component of leadership versus management. And I steer away from the old Jurassic style of management. I manage or lead in a way by example, but I also show my vulnerabilities and my mistakes to my leaders so that they feel comfortable when they have a problem. They don't hide it for a while, because then we can all grow from it. And then with that, we've come across some scenarios where we all had to put our thinking caps on. I'm one that will say, well, I've come across that before, or I'll say, well, you know what? I've never come across that before. What do you guys think? And I think over time they've trusted me to really say, okay, he really does really want to know what we're thinking about. But the other thing too is, communication, recognizing and being self-aware. It's interesting to me a lot these days. I get a lot of questions from people that are thinking about going into business, particularly couples. And I always say, it's always funny when I hear a retiring couple say, "Oh, we're going to open up a senior business." And I always say, "Oh, wait, pump your brakes." A senior business, some people think, "Oh, it's just going to be Shangri-La, it's going to be peaceful." I say the first thing is, have you ever worked with your spouse? Number one. Number two, these days, because the potential for the senior growth has led a lot of the different businesses, which used to be traditional referral sources for us, to open up their own home care. So it's an oversaturated market. I always tell people, if you're looking to get into it, you might want to consider buying an existing business. But back to me and how I guess I lead, I'm self-aware. I'm always asking questions, and I'm an effective listener. And I challenge my leaders and a few direct reports to always listen. Because when you listen, you think you know what's going to happen, but sometimes you hear some other things. And so I've become kind of like an unofficial therapist for a lot of my staff. And, we have so many different scenarios in home care. And then, I switch gears and I go home. Part of my work-life balance was supposed to be the farm, in terms of, well, I just want to go out and have pasture pets. And you stick a sign out and you say that you're taking unwanted animals, particularly horses and donkeys and ponies. There are a lot of them out there that come off the track, come off the farm. They eat big, they boo-boo big, and so they're an expense. But I created this 501c3, so I go out there and I zen with the animals. And what has started to happen is a lot of people come out there and zen with me with the animals. People with additional needs. I never say special because the world doesn't treat you special. But a lot of different organizations and clubs come out. And so that's the reason I've always, since I was a little kid, my favorite place in Philadelphia has always been the Philadelphia Zoo, where we have probably the best relationship with Victor Wan, who is retiring. They're looking for a replacement for him now. And we have our employee event there every year. We rent out the zoo for the Always Best Care folks. We have a night at the zoo. And the zoo is very different at night, by the way.
It's
But
very, very cool.
yeah, but that's it. That success through dysfunction, listening, and I show my vulnerabilities. I don't hide them. I think that sets a platform for people to also show their vulnerabilities in a non-obstructive and a non-hierarchical way, that they can really just be themselves. And let me also say this too: it's a difference being a minority in business. You know the difference between being invited and being included. So I've always said that if I had a business, I want to make sure that everybody feels included, no matter where you are.
I like that. If you could sum that up, you said a lot there. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But, what you're doing is really conscious and authentic leadership. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yes, sir.
And, I love the idea that you're listening, you're sincere about that. I got that in our first conversation, that you're a great listener and that you're very, very present. And it sounds like that's consistent with everything you do, whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, employees.
I'm pretty sure that some of my staff, especially my leadership staff, and sometimes my assistant, feel like I'm like the fly in the ointment, the fly that you can't get rid of, because they're like, oh my God, he's so involved. Like, for me too, I spy on people, I people watch. Sometimes it's nothing for me to come into one of my offices. Again, everybody doesn't know who I am. They see my name on their check, but they don't know who I am. So I will always come in somewhere plain clothes and non-assuming, and I will always just say, good morning, good afternoon. And depending on your response, that I can tell what kind of person you are. If you don't say good morning, you don't say good afternoon, good evening, that's already a red flag for me, especially in this business. And we spend a lot of time with soft skills training, because as you can imagine, the biggest part of my workforce is people between 20 to 35. And if you didn't grow up, a lot of people I'm finding out didn't grow up with Big Mama like I did. And so I always tell people to imagine what that is like when you go to the bathroom independently and you fix yourself toast and eggs by yourself, and now you have to wait 5-10 minutes for somebody to come in and fix you toast. It's an eternity. So that's why. And then not only that, you're coming in there with the multicolored hair, the long extensions, the eyelashes, the excessive jewelry, the tramp stamp. Sometimes, not all the time. And, sometimes that's like, for them, they judge. But the success in that, too, is when you talk a senior into taking a younger person as their caregiver, and that relationship starts to build. Sometimes we take care of a lot of retired nurses. And a lot of these young people are aspiring to be nurses. So you see that synergy start to evolve, and to sometimes to our detriment, because sometimes there's secrets that's going on. These private relationships. You tell the caregivers not to get personal with their clients, but how can you not get personal when you're giving somebody a bath every day or change an adult diaper? It just happens organically. But when you see the circle of life working, it's a beautiful thing. When you have a young person that may not have had a senior in their life, now have a senior in their life, it's a really emotional. It's more than just a job. It's an emotion. It's a lot of different feelings involved, and just like family, you fall out. You fall out with family. Like my great grandmother used to say sometimes. I never forget it. She used to say, sometimes your teeth and your tongue are having an argument. And I said, Grandma, what are you talking about? She said, you ever bite your tongue? I say, yeah. And then my other grandmother would say, baby, there's a lid for every pot. like all of this.
That's one of my wife's expressions. She says she was a family therapist and a bit of a matchmaker.
Right.
She said, because there's a lid for every pot.
There's a lid for every pot. Listen, if I could just have those two in my life again, I hope that I didn't meet them on the other side, but I tell you, their wisdom, and again, it wasn't academic. It was just experience.
Brian, you bring up a really interesting point, and I don't know if you are aware of this, but I've seen a couple reports and some documentaries on the importance or the exchange of sort of the senior viewpoint of life being paired with that younger. And in Sweden, they actually have a program where college students or graduate students can actually get paired to live with seniors for, sort of rent-free in exchange for care. And part of that is the knowledge transfer as well, in terms of preserving, history or, just, coping mechanisms in life, or giving companionship, because a lot of younger people are living in cities that they're not familiar with because they're going to school, and a lot of seniors might not, may have lost their spouse. And so it's a really interesting social experiment, and they've got all kinds of data about how effective and what the benefit to the community that is, and, lower rates of just, crime and disease and all kinds of things. So I think there's a really bigger aspect to what you're talking about. And I think it should be celebrated more and not just even thought of as just a job, right? It's an important way of preserving history and transferring stories and knowledge, I think, from one generation to another as well.
I love that you're thinking about the growth of your employees from these relationships as well, not just taking care of your customers, which is usually number one. It's a very synergistic type of thing you're doing, as Andrew's saying. I love that. Hey, a couple quick questions, because we only have, time goes fast when you're having fun. We only have a couple minutes, but one question for you. You're talking about the wisdom you got from your great-grandmothers. If you could speak to your younger self today as a wise man as you are, what advice would you give you?
I would say love yourself more. For so long, I think a lot of us are trying to present something that is palatable to others. And, for me as a young person, especially growing up in a single-parent home, you often, realize your devices and you try to shield yourself away from the true self and self-love. I would love myself more and try to steer away from trying to impress folks more. I would pay more attention to different triggers about me because I come from a really modest background, but I was always a quick trigger too, and sometimes rebellious. I would probably be a lot less rebellious and probably taking things and listen before because rebellion is is a self-defense, in my opinion. Because you want to do it your way. You want to make it your way. And sometimes, you lose out the big message.
Yeah, that's really a great thought. I know you're a music fan, too. We've talked a little about music, and I know you saw Queen Beyonce last week. But I did want to ask you what your favorite music, your favorite song, if you have one, favorite artist?
Yes. She's transitioned now 13 years ago. Tina Marie. Oh. Tina Marie, who I got the chance to hang out with several different times. Deja Vu, her song Deja Vu, there's a verse in there, if, hate is on your mind and you can't give love the time. If anger is your friend, don't you know when you die, you'll come back again. Deja Vu, that's the one, in one of the many songs. And then second behind that, if you ask me my favorite group of
it's consistent with your philosophy on life that we've been talking about.
Very consistent. Yeah. And Earth, Wind, and Fire. Tina Marie, first of all, was a white artist on Motown, so I identified with her because she was in a platform where, not many white people knew about her. She had this really soulful voice and range, and unless you really met her, you didn't know that she was blue-eyed. We called her blue-eyed soul, but music-wise, band-wise, Earth, Wind, and Fire, who I'm going to go see later on in August.
Great band.
And Lionel. They're coming with Lionel. So that's going to be an awesome... That's a concert my mother and I are going to, so yeah.
Well, that's great. That's a lot. So we ended on a fun note, and we do need to end because we're out of time. But thanks for everyone for being at Founders Forum today. Bryant, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Great pleasure.
Yep,
we might have you back sometime.
I would love that.
Fun. I think there's a lot more we could talk about. So everybody have a great day. See you again next week on Founders Forum.